working this hard for a reason.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Husband Show podcast where husbands band together to navigate this thing that we call marriage. Today, on the one up to edition of the Husband Show podcast, I have my man KJ hailing in from Fife, Washington. And we
Yes,
got a
sir.
unique story that he's going to share with us today about, who he is, where he's from, his marriage, and also the intricacies of his marriage and how it can be relatable to a lot of husbands out there who might be going through the same situation. So, without further ado, here's my man KJ. KJ, what's going on, brother? How's your day going so
What's
far?
up, man? How you doing, John? I'm good. I'm good. Just enjoying a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's Sunday. Sunday is for tea for me. So if
Mm-hmm.
I do coffee, it's like Monday through Friday, and I like my Earl Grey on a weekend.
Earl Grey. How do you make your coffee? Do you put anything sweeteners or anything like that in it? What do you do? Or no, straight
In
Earl
in,
Grey.
in with so I drink my tea kind of like they do in the UK.
Okay.
I like to warm up some sugar in the raw in some milk, and then I add that to the tea. And when I tell you I made the best cup of tea I've ever made in my life like 3 weeks ago, it was the tastiest. Like, I didn't want to finish it because I was just like, yo, if it could just refill itself, I'd be good to go. But nah, man, it's a tea for me. Like, I'll do tea like nothing in it, like during the week or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to Saturday, Sunday, if I do tea, I gotta have it with my milk and sugar.
Well, that's good. That's good. I drink tea, but mostly I guess I'm a basic tea guy. Just hot water, tea bag, and some type of
Hey,
sweetener.
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that, man. Like hot water, tea bag, lemon.
It is what it is, and
It is what
I'm
it
a
is.
green tea guy. I'm a green tea guy.
Mm,
That's always been my go to is green tea. So
green tea is
anyway,
good.
after we covered our tea sabbatical, which I enjoy a lot. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I always call it the five W's. Who you are, where you from, what you do, what do you like, and where are you going to next. So take it from there, Mr. KJ.
Absolutely. Again, Kev, KJ, I'm from Washington State. Out of my 40, going on 43 years of life, I have lived here all but 4 years of that life.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like I grew up in northern Washington, up near the border of Canada. So growing up was a little interesting. There wasn't a lot of people who looked like me in the area unless they were Native American or Hispanic.
Right,
A
right.
couple Samoan people who were up there, but I moved down to the Tacoma area in 2002, and I feel more from this area as I felt always felt more welcomed from this area when being in it. Just a kid from the Pacific Northwest who loves the Pacific Northwest and doesn't see himself really living outside of it until retirement.
Okay.
So that's yeah, man. I'm down here. I own a brand called Forever Green. We
Hmm.
are a brand who prides ourselves on letting people know about the Pacific Northwest and that it's more than just Seattle or the Space Needle or anything like that. Like, we want people to know about Spokane. We want people to know about the Grand Coulee Dam. We want people to know about Tri Cities, the Yakima Valley, Walla Walla, and just like the wine that comes from there. That's absolutely amazing. Um, Oregon, Idaho, Boise's cool. Um, and a little bit like I consider Missoula, Montana, the Pacific Northwest as well. I know
Hmm.
it's 7 hours from where I'm at right now, but I consider it the Pacific Northwest because of how much of a melting pot of a place it is, which is very strange to think of like Montana of being a
Hmm.
place that has a melting
Yeah.
pot like that. But in my time, like, I've been out there half a dozen times and I've had a great experience every time I've been out there.
Good, good, good. So tell us a little about what do you do? What do you do for a living? Because I'm pretty sure you gotta, about my little bit of research that I did. You know, you got a full plate that you keep your toe into. So tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I'm a typical Caribbean man. I got
Hmm.
multiple things I be doing all the time. So, day job wise, right now, no day job. Unfortunately, layoffs and terminations happen. So right now, looking for that day job so I can
Right.
help, for better support my family. Other than that, with Forever Green, we have our online store. Not a lot of business coming in this year, but that's okay. I've revamped some of our shirt designs, and I'm about to
Hmm.
drop a new one in August. So when we drop kind of summer collection, if you will. Hopefully some sales will pick up there. But I do my podcast through Forever Green, which is our 7 Questions Sunday, where we find
Okay.
interesting people and businesses from the Pacific Northwest and we interview them. We ask them 7 questions. And the 7 questions are basically gathered around, like we're doing right now. Who are they? How'd they get started?
Okay.
What they're doing? And then we put it out there. We did 209 um, written blog entries on our website since
Okay.
2019. So we just transitioned over into the podcast format last year.
Hmm.
So we're really getting started in that space. Um, and then also I do music production as well as engineering, as well as I am an artist. I have been since 2009, just on the heels of my first divorce. So
Okay.
I needed a way to get myself centered again. And my homeboy had a
Hmm.
studio. Like he had like one of those tough sheds converted into a studio in his backyard. And he's like, I
Yeah.
need you to get over here. I need you to lock in with me because we need to get your mind right. And I was in there for 15 hours one night and just like wide awake, making music and getting it all out. And I just kind of like, you know what? I'm gonna keep doing this. I come from a musical background, so to speak. Um,
Hmm.
my uncle is a musician, and I learned everything I know about music from him and watching him. So it's been interesting, man. And then on top of that, I do graphic design work for businesses, and I do some podcast and video editing for some
Right.
nonprofits and whatnot as well.
Man, it's like you have your hand into a lot of things. It's nothing like being able to be able to expand your creative talent in multiple ways, other than being a one trick pony. I always say I'm not a one trick pony. I'm like a seven
Mhm.
trick pony. I got seven tricks under my bag. So being able to be multifaceted in many avenues is sensational, right? And you say that you're from the Caribbean islands. You want to talk about a little bit where you're from? I see a flag hanging up there in the back,
Oh
over your
yeah, that's
shoulder.
my father is from Antigua Barbuda.
Hmm.
He's a Caribbean man. The interesting thing about that is I just found him in 2019.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so the gentleman I'm named after, who we all thought was my dad, is not my dad. And we just
Okay.
all found this out in 2019 together. And the only person who could answer the question passed away in 1983.
Ah,
So when my birth mother passed away, like the answers to everything just kind of disappeared.
right.
So yeah, so I mean, I wasn't even on the search for nobody. I was just trying to figure out where I come from
Mhm,
because I am biracial. So for me,
mhm.
I already knew where my mother's family came from. I could trace my mother's family back to England and all this
Okay.
other stuff. Like I could go like 5 times great grandfather trace it back,
Oh,
right?
nice,
But
nice.
on my dad's side, I couldn't find nothing.
Mhm.
So the man I'm named after, I'm like looking up his family. I'm like, I know they're from Texas. I know this, this, and this, but I couldn't go back a certain, far. So I was like, what's going on here? So I did the whole ancestry DNA, hopefully thinking that I could find something there. And that was 2017. And then 2019, I had somebody hit me up and was like, hey, we match DNA. I don't know you. I've never heard your name before, but we match a very high percentage of DNA, and I really want to find out how we're related. And it ended up being my cousin.
Okay.
So she hit me up, and I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." We immediately exchanged phone numbers, and we was like texting for like 3 4 days, and then she hits me on a Sunday. Is like calls me. Is like, "Hey, I figured out how we're related. I'll call you tomorrow once I get the confirmation, but I figured it out." I was like, "Okay,
Okay.
cool."
Pins and
She
needles.
calls me.
Pins and
Oh,
needles,
bro,
man.
bro. Hey, and what's wild? What's wild, John, is you figure like somebody be freaking out, right?
Right.
I was not freaking out. I was so calm. I was cool as a cucumber. My wife was freaking out.
I'm
She's
hearing
like,
the
"How are
story and
you?"
I'm nervous. I'm
Yeah,
like,
hey, she was like, "How are you not freaking out right now?" I was like, "Well, honestly, because there's nothing you could tell me." Because at the time I was turning 38. So there was nothing you could tell me at that time that was gonna change everything that had happened in my life already. So
touche.
why would I be like freaking out? Like it was so interesting to me because everything started to make sense in my
Mhm.
life to me. And I get a phone call from her on that Monday. She goes, "So there's a gentleman. I'd like to give you his phone number and he can explain better to you how we're related." I was like, "Okay." So I call him. I'm at work, mind you. I was at work at the time.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like literally, I was working for a trucking company. and
Mm-hmm.
I was a recruiter for a trucking company, and I literally took like 4 hours of my workday that day, and I was on the phone for 4 hours of that day. And I called this gentleman, and we're talking, and he's got this thick West Indian accent. And I'm like, okay, I'm
All right.
talking
All
to
right.
him.
All
I'm
right.
like, and like he's asking like, do you know your father? Like all this other stuff. I was like, yeah. Like in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm named after him. Like, he asked me how my mother was doing. Asked me how's Claudia doing, and
Wait a minute.
I was like, okay. I was like, well, I apologize to let you know this, but Claudia passed away in 1983, and he started choking up on the phone. So like
Mm.
he was getting real emotional and all this other stuff, and I was just like, I'm sorry to let you know that. Like, he's like, so you were like almost 2 when she passed away? I was like, yeah. Like she 4 more months and I would have been 2. And like he's like excuses himself, like puts himself on mute, comes back, and we're talking, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, he wants to say something, but I don't know
You
what he
feel it.
wants to say. So I
You feel
right,
the weight of
right.
the conversation. You know, you're waiting for
Yep.
the
I'm
yeah.
waiting for him to come out and say something. I said, so you know what? I said, you know what? I can tell there's something you want to ask me or you want to say. Please feel free. Like this is an open conversation. And he's like, well, I feel like you might be my son. And I was like, okay, let's expand on that. And we
Exactly.
kept talking
Let's talk
about it.
about it. Okay.
And my parents were both at Job Corps in Astoria, Oregon. That's where they had met. And he was 18 and she was 20.
Mm-hmm.
So they had met, and there was a very small group of black dudes that hung out together, which is where the gentleman I'm named after was also at Job Corps. He
Mm-hmm.
was also 18. So they all knew each other,
Right.
and because all the guys knew each other because it was Astoria, Oregon in the 80s, like 70s, 80s. Black people really wasn't welcome.
Right.
So
So
they
yeah,
all hung
tight
out
knit group.
together.
Tight
Yep, there was
knit
like
group.
9 or
Yeah.
10 of them that was at Job Corps together, and they hung out. And next thing I know, like he's telling me like my mom left and moved back to Anchorage. Like he was under the impression she was from Anchorage. But that's where the gentleman I'm named after was from. So,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandfather had told the 2 of them, come on back. I'm gonna help take care of y'all. And, while, she's pregnant. So, my father and I are talking, and he's like, would you be up to do a DNA test? I was like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my head, I'm like, something's going on here.
Yeah.
Like, let's get this
Yeah.
figured out. Right.
Yes.
So,
It's almost like it's like almost like some type of either closure and
mhm,
opening in the same intertwined, because if
absolutely.
it's not, it can you can move
It
forward, but if it
For me, it was
is,
closure.
okay.
For me, it was definitely closure because I wanted to know who I was. Like, that's
Right.
all it was. Like, I've struggled with that my whole life. Like, who
Hmm.
am I? And that's understandable. Growing up biracial, you struggle with who are you?
Right.
Everybody around me when I was a kid seeing me with this white woman who was my mother's sister who adopted me, like,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, you're adopted." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that is true. I was adopted by my aunt.
However, comma,
However,
yeah.
both my parents are not black." Like, I was
Right.
like, "However, that was my mother's sister who passed away.
Hmm.
My mother passed away, so her sister adopted me with her ex-husband, and those were my mom and dad growing up." You know what
Right.
I mean? I didn't know the gentleman I'm named after until I was 18
Hmm.
because he wasn't around. So
Right.
I tell my father, I was like, yeah, if you want to, we could do the DNA test. I was like, how do you want to do this? He's like, well, I'm going to pay for it. I'll have everything overnighted to you and we'll get it taken care of. So I was like, okay, bet. I texted my address and everything. And literally 24 hours later, I had the kid at the house. And it took me a couple days. I kind of sat with it for a couple days.
Right.
It's like, this is surreal now. Like, this is surreal now. Like, this is going to be interesting to see what happens. And my wife's
Hmm.
like, you need to take this test. We need to do this.
Hmm.
Like, she wanted to know more than I wanted to know.
Right.
So I was like, all right, let's do this. We take the test, we send it off on July 14th. My birthday is July 15th. The next day, I'm pulling into the gym, meeting up with my wife after work, and I get a text message from my father with the DNA results.
Which well, okay, from your father. Which
My birth
father?
father.
There we go.
yeah, the
Bird party.
gentleman I was talking to. So
Yeah.
I get this text message and it's got a PDF attached to it. And I was like, I'm in the car in the parking lot of the gym waiting for my wife to pull in. And I was like so reluctant to open it up without her there. But I was like, you know what? Pull the band-aid off. Let's do this. I open it up and I immediately scroll to the bottom because I know where these results are going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be John. When I tell you that thing said
Oh.
99.99999%,
It's like the sliver is so minuscule that just it's
bro, like
immeasurable.
there's no room for error.
It's
So
immeasurable.
my heart didn't drop like into my stomach or nothing. I just had this feeling wash over me of just like, wow,
Was it like a
wow.
was it like a feeling of relief, you would say?
Yeah. Like
Okay.
to be honest, yeah, because the gentleman I'm named after, who I thought was my dad, just has never really been a dad. He's acted
Okay.
more like an older brother or like an uncle, or like just he's just like out of sight, out of mind type of dude. You know what I mean? Like just
Mhm.
and I just like, you know what? It makes sense. It makes sense. I felt the closure. I
Right.
felt the
Yeah.
closure. Like, oh my god, like this is actually my father,
Mhm.
and I wasn't even looking for him. He wasn't looking for me.
Right.
He didn't even have any idea I existed.
Right.
And I'm sitting there like, man, this is wild. So I let all the homies know, like all
Mhm.
my brothers. I was like, yo, we need to talk. Like, and I'm like, yo, I put in the group chat, I was like, we need to talk. I need to see all of y'all tonight. And we
Right.
need to talk about this because I'm reeling over here. And they're like, okay, let's do that. So we all got together and like six of us are just sitting there talking. Just like, this is some wild stuff. But you know what's even wilder, John? I found out how much family I have in the Tacoma area from my father's family.
Mhm.
And when I tell you one of these cousins I have, I was hanging out with through a friend of mine, and we didn't even know we were cousins.
Had no idea there was blood right next to you.
Nope, no idea. And then the apartment complex we lived in, one of my cousins, his brother lived on the other side of the apartment complex. And we didn't even find that out until we bought our house in 2019 and moved
Mhm.
right down the street. And then my father came to town. He came to town, so we found out in July. He was up in town from Florida in September,
Mhm.
visiting me for the first time. And he introduced me to my cousin who lived in the apartments. I'm like, "What are you talking about? You've lived here for 2 years." I've literally lived on the other side of this complex since 2015. What is going on?
Right.
Like,
As
so
so
it
it's like as big as the world is, it is so small and compact, especially when you
man,
find out, who you are and the gifts that
John,
that give.
my father left Washington in 2001. He lived in Washington, in Tacoma, while I was up north.
Mhm.
Like, I was growing up, I was
Same atmosphere,
graduating high
same
school.
atmosphere.
We was in the same state. We
Yeah.
were in the same state, and then I find out the place I worked, he used to work for Home Depot, and he opened
Mhm.
up the Home Depot in Tukwila. I worked
Yeah.
at a business that was right out front of that Home Depot a year after he left.
Crazy how that shit works out, man.
So like ships passing in the night, bro. Like, and I'm hearing all this from him. He's like, "Yeah, I worked there, I worked here." I'm like, "What is going on right now?" Like, I've been to these places. I know some of the people he's talking about, but never knew about him. So that was
Mhm.
it's been a very interesting ride since 2019, man. I feel so much more like I know who I am. And because
Mhm.
I had so many people like tell it like being like, "Oh, so what island are you from?" I'm like, "Well, I'm from Washington. I'm not
Right.
from an island. From but I had like Samoan friends and like Hawaiian
Yeah.
friends are like, "Oh, so what? So is your family Samoan? Or like, are you from Hawaii?" I'm like, "No, I'm from Washington." And now it's but a friend of mine who's Samoan, his grandma told me when I was like 18, we were living up north. He was like, she was like, "So what island are you from?" I was like, "Oh, I'm not." She goes, "No, you are." And I was like, I'm pretty sure I grew up here." Like I She's like, "No, your family's from an island." I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, I wasn't gonna argue with her about it, like, she
Yeah.
was feeding me, and I was like, "Alright, I'm just not gonna argue with you, okay." And then, to find out, like, my family comes from Antigua, Barbuda, and my father was raised in St. Croix, Virgin Island, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so, I'm not while I'm not Pacific Islander, I am Caribbean Islander,
Yeah.
and, like, knowing that has given me a lot of closure on my life, and I finally
Mhm.
feel whole. I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah,
why I
that's good.
wasn't freaking out because I'm like, "Yo, I feel whole. I
Right.
feel like I know who I am now," and life has been beautiful since, man. I don't know if you saw my TikTok I posted the other day, but people are doing that, like, the trend of, like, rating what my parents did. I don't
Okay.
know if you've come across this. So, I did one about my mom, and it was just the dark humor of it, like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And I thought it was cute. I thought it was funny. It wasn't disrespectful. But then
I'm
I
about to
did one
dig it
about
up.
I did one about I pinned both videos to the top of my page.
Okay.
So I did one about my father that was super positive. I said,
Mhm.
rating the things my father's done. And the only thing that, like, the joke of it was I gave him a negative 100 for not being there, but it wasn't his fault.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, out of 10.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
this thing's almost at 250,000 views right now because it's the most
It's so
positive one
relatable.
people have seen.
Mhm.
Like, because everybody's doing all these dark humor ones or all these dark ones or these really angry ones, and people are seeing, like, I'm doing something positive with it,
Right.
and I'm giving that positive spin, and, like, the people commenting are like, "Oh my god, thank you for a positive one. This is so great. It's good to see
For
somebody
once.
actually be for once," right? So,
Yeah.
I just thought it was real funny, and then my father is a substitute teacher in the Orlando school district,
Mhm.
and 2 of his students saw the video. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, that's Mr. Thomas. That's my substitute teacher. He's the best." And I was like,
You see what I'm saying?
"Wow, okay.
Full circle moment.
Full
Full circle
circle,
moment.
man. Full circle. Yeah.
Well, that is an amazing, amazing story, KJ. And congrats on the newfound family and extended family that you can build on. And it's just great to hear how things can turn into a way that makes you feel better about who you are as an individual and
Yeah.
something that you can share with going on in the future. And it's a great story to tell. I'm pretty sure it would be nice to do even with you and your pops did a one-on-one and just discuss where your lives have been until the
We're
moment
gonna do
to the
that.
second.
We're gonna
That
do
would
it.
be
So,
that would be an amazing, amazing thing to
he's
watch.
gonna be here for a month for my birthday next month. So, he's gonna
Hmm.
be in town from June 27th to July 24th
Hmm.
with my baby sister, who's a year younger than my son.
Right.
So it's very weird. It's a very weird dynamic on that. Like, all right, pops, I see you. I see you. You was out here. So, but he's gonna come up here, and I got a homeboy who does videography, and
Okay.
I'm gonna have him. I'm gonna do like an interview session with my pops, and I'm gonna talk to him, and I'm gonna do this video about our story
Yeah.
because I think it's very important to give like the complete like account of a story like this so people can
Hmm.
understand like, hey, you may like be feeling some type of way about meeting these people that you find through your ancestry, but here's what can happen
Right.
if when it's right. Here's what can
Right.
happen with everybody.
And that's the best part about it, to be able to discuss that and share that, because I know that's an amazing story. And it's probably not as unique. It's probably unique to a lot of people, but it's probably a lot of people in that situation that's trying to figure out how to navigate it, how to can take a testament from what you're saying and how you just
Mhm.
embellished it and took it all in, and then you turned it into some closure. But it's also opening, because now you're opening a relationship with somebody over the last 5 years who you didn't
Yeah.
even know existed. So, and I'm pretty
Exactly.
sure that people want to listen and figure out how they can navigate through this, and then also the fear and also the success of doing DNA tests and what they can reveal. So, it
Yeah.
works out. It works out for the plus. It works out for pluses and minuses. It depends on how it reflects to you. So, with that being said, I'll make you one more thing. What's next for KJ?
I gotta finish this album, man. Like, I've been saying that for like 6 months. I gotta finish this album. Like
Hmm.
I've been working on what might be my last full studio album, and I'll just
Okay.
probably release singles here and there.
Mhm.
because I'm not touring no more. I'm not doing shows no more. Like COVID
Right.
really messed that up for me.
Mhm.
So I had an 18 city tour planned, like
Right.
ready to go, and then COVID hit. We got 3 shows in and had to like shut it all down.
Yeah. COVID
So,
snatched the rug under a lot of people's feet.
uh-huh. And I was still able to release an album that year in 2021, but in 2020 I dropped like 27 singles. I just did a new
Mhm.
single every week because I've been working on so much music. But right now I'm focused on getting my album finished. My son's going to be on the album. He does his thing as far as music's concerned. And I love music so much that I never got into music to be famous. I never got
Right.
into music to get a Grammy. I never got into music
Mhm.
to, you know, be a millionaire. I got into music because I enjoy making music. I
Mhm.
enjoy it. I enjoy the process of it. So as far as what's next for me, finishing this album, I'm working with a very talented artist from Canada right now. I just mixed a single for her, and I got my cousin coming up here next week. She's gonna record some songs with me here. I'm in my home studio right now. We just built a 9
Right.
by 9 room in my garage. So, I got that going on, and really, man, just that and spending time with family, with my wife, my bonus daughter, and my son, and that's really it.
I like when you say bonus daughter. I have a bonus daughter also. I
Yeah,
love I
man.
love I
Yeah,
love
man.
how I love
I
it's
rarely
funny.
use that. I
No,
rarely
but I
use
like I
bonus,
like I've never
but
I never heard it, but when you just said it, I was like, it makes so much sense.
yeah.
That is what it is. Having children
Well,
myself
and the
and
funny
having a
part
bonus
about
daughter.
that, the funny part about having her is I've been around her for the last 10 years of her life,
Mhm.
and she's me. She's me. Like, I mean, you would legitimately think that she was my daughter. The
Mhm.
way she acts, the way she thinks about certain things, like her mannerisms, the way she reacts to
Yeah.
things, it's me, 100%. And my son's not like that. Like, he's very much like his mother,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Okay, bet." But then I'm like, I go pick up my daughter from school, and nobody bats an eye because they think she's biracial
Right.
because nobody ever sees her with her biological father.
Right.
All
Right.
her friends have only seen her with me, and they're like, "Oh, you're mixed. That's so cool." She's like, "I am not."
Nope.
Yeah, she's like, "Nope, I'm not." But my son is, and he's a
Right.
quarter,
Mhm.
and he and I have conversations all the time about white passing and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he very much understands that he does. But you put that boy out in the sun during the summer, you might as well think he came from the island himself. Like he
Yeah, good.
he get as
Sun
dark as
kids.
me,
Yeah.
man. He'd be as dark as me by the end of July. I promise.
And that's good. And we can transition into family dynamic and let's talk a little bit about your marriage. How long have you been married, sir?
We have been married. This year is 2024. This year will be 8 years married.
8 years married. How did you guys meet?
We actually met through a charity organization.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Chive. It was a big thing back in
Yes,
like
yes,
2012.
yes.
Yeah, so we met through the Seattle Facebook page for them.
Mhm.
And we have been commenting on this post about an event coming up, and I saw her picture. I was like, "Good God. You know what? I need to know who this woman is." And I reached out with a corny line. I was corny with it on purpose because I was at the point in my life where I wasn't looking for anything.
Mhm,
Like, I was just like, whatever happens, happens at this point in my life.
mhm,
I had just got out of a pretty bad relationship prior to meeting her. So I wasn't going into anything with any expectations. I was just breaking the ice, saying hello, maybe conversation
mhm.
start, maybe go get lunch together or something. And I hit her up and we started talking, and I was in a band at the time. We had a show coming up, and I was like, "Hey, invite you out if you want to come to this show." We had been talking like a week at this point, and she's like, "Well, I can't make it to your show. I have a baby shower that night. So why don't we get together and have drinks the next night?" I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we could
Mhm.
do that." So
Sure.
we met through that, and honestly, like, she is the dopest woman that I've met, that I've ever been with in my life, and we had so many misconnections from the
Mhm.
before we met. Like, I checked her ID when I worked at a bar called BB McGraw's in Auburn
Mhm.
back in, like, 2003, 2004. So, I checked her ID, and she like, we started talking about, like, who we knew, where we've been, and all this other stuff, and we realized all the misconnections
Right.
that we had had for over 10 years, like 10, 11 years of misconnections, and then we finally meet and we get together. Like, it's she's just the dopest, John. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
she is.
I
She is.
saw you had a moment. I saw the moment right quick. I saw a little yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's the dopest, man.
Yeah, and that's what when you find that one, they can bring, levity to your life and bring balance to
Mm,
your life and give you the things that you don't, you realize you were missing. And it's like me, this is not my first marriage. So I look at the relationships that I've been in prior and what was causing it to be mismanaged per se and not, a successful marriage. And then I look at it, me and my wife, we've been married going on it'll be 5 years in April. And
congratulations.
yeah, I'm 52. So I'm on the back end as far as,
Mhm. Right.
heading towards a century mark in life. It is what it is. I'm not morbid or dormant about, how long, people have to live. So
Right.
we got married. Yeah, I was probably 47-ish, close to 47. We got married. We met late, and she's probably 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
And I look at it as far as, maybe I'm not super religious in any aspects, but maybe this is way of God's way of saying that, He's waiting for me to get to where I'm mentally in a place to where I can be blessed with
Yep.
somebody to be married, because I probably wasn't ready when I was in my 30s or 20s or 25,
Mhm.
when I was married before. And I needed a break to reset and become in tune with myself. And then I'd be blessed with somebody who can bring it all together.
Man, you ain't never said nothing but a word. Like, the universe tells you, man. The
Yeah.
universe tells you. Like, I got married. My first marriage was 2008. I was 27,
Hmm.
and I thought this was gonna be the woman I was gonna be with the rest of my life, and I didn't see the red flags. Like, I didn't see any of that. And so when we divorced, like, 9 months later, like,
Mm.
in '09, I was like, "Okay." And I just said, "You know what? I'm never getting married again. You
Yeah.
know, if I might have a long-term girlfriend, but I'm not getting married again. I'm not doing it. Like, no,
Hmm.
I'm not going through what I went through again." And then, '09 to 2014, so that 5 years right there, I was like, it's cool. Like, I was in a relationship. It just wasn't going nowhere. Then she said she didn't
Yeah.
wanna have kids, and I was like, "Well, I already have a kid, so that's weird. Like, you don't
Yeah.
wanna have kids, but I have a son.
Right.
Like, so you don't even want him? Okay, cool." Threw my hands
Okay.
up. Yeah, yeah. Like, she didn't wanna know him, like, none of that.
Oh, we're a
So I
package
was
deal,
like,
ma'am.
uh, ma'am, I am a package deal." Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, women say
Yes.
that all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but I told her, I was like, "Well, this isn't gonna work then, because you're saying you don't wanna meet my son. My son's an important part of my life."
Hmm.
So, yeah, and I broke
Cool.
up with
Cool.
her. She thought I broke up with her because my band and I were playing in San Diego, and I just wanted to go out and get some strange. I
Hmm.
was like,
It's many layers to
"That has
this.
nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it." It didn't. It had nothing to do with it,
Yeah.
but, I mean, but I was able to go do that show with no, like, with no BS on my shoulders.
Yeah.
So, after her, I was kinda like, I was telling my bandmates, and I was talking to my brothers, I was like, "You know what, man? I'm cool with being single. If I'm single until my son turns 18 or graduates high school, and then I meet somebody, I'm cool with that. Like, it's whatever,
Hmm.
man. Like, I'm
It
just gonna
is what it
live my
is.
life for me. It is what it is." And
Hmm.
next thing I know, I met my wife.
And that's all she wrote.
Yeah, yeah, literally 6 months later, after sorry, 5 months after I broke with my ex-girlfriend, I met my wife.
Hey, sometimes God drops your gifts in your lap whenever you don't expect it. You just gotta
And
appreciate
you
it.
don't block your blessings.
Don't block your blessings. That's
Don't
the
block them.
mantra that's the mantra going forward. Don't block your blessings. So
Absolutely.
with that being said, You mentioned earlier when we were talking about you being interracial and also with
Mhm,
you being in an interracial relationship, interracial
mhm.
kids, some kids that's not mixed, so on and so forth. You have a great melting pot of family dynamic that is
Absolutely.
conversational. So, with that being said, you being in an interracial relationship and the way society has been race wise, is there any stigma surrounding being in a racial relationship? I could talk from my experience having been married in a racial
Yeah.
relationship, but from your perspective, the stigma that surrounds being in a racial relationship. There are a lot of people they may look down on that, and some people who just say, like we just said, is what it is. How does that come with you? Being in a relationship, that's a tongue twister. Interracial relationship. And how does that work in your favor, and how might it not work in your favor? Any aspect. There's no right or wrong
Uh,
answer. Just from your perspective.
I mean, from my perspective, I've been in relationship with all different types of women in my
Right.
life.
Hmm.
Not just white women, but a couple black women, some Latino,
Yeah.
Asian, like,
Equal
man,
opportunist. Equal
look, man,
opportunist.
look, my whole thing was
Absolutely.
like I grew up the only black kid in the school. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I didn't the only time I saw black people where I grew up was on the weekend at the mall. Like,
Right.
that's the only time I saw black folks. So if I didn't hang out with black folks. I hung out
Hmm.
with the Native American kids, the Hispanic
Hmm.
kids, and the white kids. Like, we had a Native American family that lived right next door to us from the time I was in 2nd grade until 5th grade,
Hmm.
and they were great people, and I hung out with them. Like,
Hmm.
like, later on in life, I dated the daughter of the guy who lived next door to us. Like, it was just cool. Like, for me, I never saw anything wrong with it
Hmm.
because I knew I came from that.
Right.
So if that created me, how could I be against that?
Right.
That was my whole
Exactly.
thing. So as I got older, I started seeing myself differently in the spaces I was in, like when I was 18,
Mm,
19, 20.
okay. Some
That's when
pivotal
I really
times.
very pivotal time. So when I turned 19, man, I spent all my time in Canada because I was right there at the border. I would go to the
Hmm.
Canada on the weekends. I'd party, I'd hang out, and all this other stuff, and just started meeting more diverse people. Like, my first experience with East Indian folks was in Canada.
Hmm.
Like, I had never really had experience and interactions with them, like verbal communications or conversations until I started hanging out in Vancouver. And
Hmm.
really, that's when I said to myself, "You know what? This is the type of life that I like because you have all these different types of people who are together in one place and everybody's getting along. There's no fighting." Like, I experienced my fair share of racism growing up and in high school, and I really didn't date in high school because of that,
Okay.
and it's just for me, man, I never really been somebody stuck on what race somebody is.
Right.
Like, it's never mattered to me.
Hmm.
Like,
Asshole's
when
an
I
asshole.
tell asshole's an asshole, right? Everybody got one. Like, you hear
Yep.
people tell a story like, "Oh, you'll never believe what happened today. So this black dude at the store. Why does it gotta be a black dude? Why couldn't you
Why
say
does the
this dude at
story
the
have to
store?"
start off like that? What is it?
Right.
Unless that's a significant part to the story that takes the story to another
Exactly.
level. When
Unless
people
it's
say that
somebody calling this black dude the wrong word, then don't
I
start
get
with
it.
this black dude.
It drives me crazy. And I talked about this probably like 3 weeks ago with a friend of mine. That drives me crazy. So there's this
Mhm.
white cat walking down the street. Okay, I'm ready for it. And
What's
he
gonna
walked
happen?
past me. Yeah, and then there's sometimes the race isn't relevant. Why is it relevant to be able to tell us? Anyway, man, that drives me
Right.
crazy. But I
Yeah, that
concur.
drives me nuts. So as I grew up, man, like, I gravitated toward, like, individuals that I felt like some type of connection with, or who were just
Hmm.
super cool. You know what I mean? Like, it was never about, oh, I'm only gonna date,
Right,
biracial
right,
people, or I'm only gonna date black women, or I'm only gonna date white women. Which for me, like, I always wanted to meet a woman who was mixed because I was mixed, but then I realized
right.
most of the mixed girls are dating white dudes. And I was like,
Touche.
okay, okay, fair, fair. And then most of the mixed dudes I know were dating white women or black women. I was like, okay, I mean, I
Right.
get that. That's cool. Like, so for me, like, I grew up in a family of women and
Hmm.
there's like 4 boys. Like, so
Right.
it's like, me and my cousin, my 3 cousins are the only boys in the first generation of grandchildren, so, like, all the girls I met were friends of my cousins or anything like that, and so for me, it was more like, if I meet somebody who likes me for who I am, I'm with it. Like, I didn't set out to do anything one way. I
Mhm.
experienced life and what it had to offer me, and I found myself in an interracial relationship with my wife, and I don't feel like there's been anything that I should be worried about in my
Mhm.
relationship. You know, her
Right.
family has been very welcoming and
Mhm.
very, very wonderful, man. Like, her aunts are all wonderful, and they are great people. Her dad was super welcoming. Her brothers were super welcoming, you know, so it's one of those things where if I would have felt something off, her and I can communicate in a way that I would have let her know and she would have remedied the situation, whatever that
Right.
situation may have been.
Right.
So for me, you know, it's been different every time, of course.
Mhm.
But with where I'm at right now, like I feel like just I've experienced no negativity of it,
Mhm.
and that's what keeps me so grateful for my relationship is that if there was anything negative, she'd be the first one to say something because
Right.
she's with the shits. Like
Mhm.
don't disrespect me in front of her because she'll get you.
Yeah.
You know what I
It's good
mean?
to have that.
So
It's
it
good to have that. It's good to have that
yeah.
woman in your back that's going to, support you, right, wrong, or indifferent,
Mhm.
but check you if need be, if things go
Yep.
awry, but be
Absolutely.
100% a voice to your success and a voice to your support when need be. And having myself having lived in Tacoma, Washington, I know geographically, interracial relationships can be frowned upon different locations,
Mhm.
and and
Yeah.
and then from my time spent in in Washington up there, um, it is a it's a safe environment almost to an extent when it comes to that if you look at it because it was common when I was there. It was just I was with my white wife at the time when I lived in Tacoma, so
Yeah.
it was the setting was it was very open to interracial in every aspect, not just black to white. You
Mhm.
see what I'm saying? Especially with the
Absolutely.
Pacific Islanders coming down there dating black, Pacific Islanders dating white, and all the
Mhm.
islanders down there just mixing and mingling. That's why Washington is unique from other places, so the Alabamas and certain things down in the South where it might be frowned upon or you might catch some heat.
Mhm.
But I can see where Tacoma it's easier to breathe and just be happy without worry about that spotlight being on your back. Assholes and assholes everywhere you go, but having a safe environment per se just by happenstance to be able to live in that environment.
Now that is true of Western Washington.
Okay.
That is so, and I don't say that to say that Central Washington or Eastern Washington are
Mhm.
the exact opposite. However, if you look at Western Washington from, let's say, Everett
Mhm.
to Olympia,
Mhm.
that is the most diverse, the most you're going to see interracial relationships. But if you go
Yeah.
like Everett North or Olympia South, that's where it kind of gets where there's not as many. Like when you
Yeah.
get to like Kelso, Longview, all the way
Yeah.
down to until you get back to Vancouver, which is close to Portland, and then you're
Right.
back into you know what I mean? So, but then you get to like Central Washington is where like Ellensburg, you really don't see it a whole lot, even though it's a college town.
Mhm.
Even though Central Washington University is there, you really don't see interracial relationships there.
Mhm.
And in like Yakima, you might, but mostly it's gonna be mostly Hispanic
Right.
families in Yakima, Tri-Cities, and everything like that.
Mhm.
But then when you get to like a Spokane, that's where you do see interracial relationships in Spokane, but Spokane, man, has so many nuances to it
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
close to Idaho,
Right.
and then northern Idaho is where it's a problem. Like Northern
Yes.
Idaho is a problem, man. Like I do my best to stay out of Northern Idaho. I have two good friends of mine who got married in I think Rathdrum, Idaho, and I felt so uncomfortable driving to their wedding venue because I was like, what's going on now? Like I
Let me
saw
make sure my tank is
no
full. Let
brown
me make sure my
people. Yep.
tires are right. Let me make sure my vehicle is running right. Okay, my driver's license, my
John,
insurance.
my homie was getting married, asked me if I could pick up like a couple cases of beer for the wedding. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I stop at this store on the way to the venue when I should have got it in Spokane. I'd have been fine. But I stop and I walk into this convenience store and just the red state of it, like all thrown up all in that store. And I'm like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
okay. Okay, I buy my
That's
beer.
weird.
Dude at the counter was nice. Like he wasn't rude or nothing, but I was like, I don't feel comfortable.
He was
So
cordial. He was cordial.
he was cordial and he wanted my money.
Cordial. There it is.
he, he wanted my money
There it
and I was
is.
leaving the store, and as I'm leaving the store and there's people coming in, people are like,
Double
I'm
take.
like, yeah, I'm like, okay, we gotta go. I get in the car with my wife. I was like, we should get to the venue. And I told her what had happened, and it was just, man, I tell you, man, it's very interesting when you. I live on this side of the state, and I was just over on the other side of the state for a week. I was just in Spokane for a week, and it was very different this time around. Like Spokane felt different in a good way.
Mhm.
Um, but when I was growing up, you barely saw black folks in Spokane.
Mhm.
Like I'd go visit my family because my mother's family is from Spokane, and I'd go visit family over there, and I'd be with my cousins, like two white boys. We'd be walking down the street, and I'd never see another black person. But my aunt knew all the black people,
Right.
so like she knew them all. Like she was married to this dude, Charles,
Mhm.
nice ass dude, and he every time I'd be in town, I'd go kick it at Charles' house for like 2, 3 days and hang out
Right.
with him and his family. So, because she wanted me to be around that.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
and
Right.
for me, like at that time in my life, I had really just came back from an immersive 4 years of living in a black household, and I had never done that growing up.
Okay.
So it was completely different. And it was something I felt I had needed. Even when I
Mhm.
came back from living with my aunt and uncle, I was like, yo, I don't like being in 100% white spaces no more.
Right.
I just didn't. So being here in Washington and being in Western Washington, that's why I say when I moved down to this area, I felt more welcome. Because to your point of what you're saying about Western Washington, it's more diverse in the,
Yeah.
the the communities that people keep, the relationships that people have, and it made me feel like I was home.
Right.
That's why I love
Right.
Tacoma so much, man. Like I just feel like I'm home when I'm
Yeah,
here.
and plus also with the amount of military that's down there
Mhm,
and the plethora of interracial marriages that's within the military and people that live the people retire there, people get stationed there 2, 3, 4 years.
mhm,
So it kind of like the footprint expands a little bit more to make it, a comfortable space. And it's important about being in a comfortable space
mhm.
as we go into, you're talking about, cultures. It's two different cultures, that we live in, especially in an interracial relationship. That shit is tearing my mouth up. In a relation, in a mixed relationship, I should say.
There you
And
go,
you
there you go.
and your son. You said, how old is your son?
My son just turned 18 in April.
Just turned 18, and then he's from a
He just turned
previous
18.
marriage.
No, no, no. His mother and I kinda we talked, dated, whatever it
Right,
was.
right, right,
When
right,
I
right, right.
was this is gonna make me sound like a typical black father, but, um, we dated, talked, like, when I was on a break with my ex-wife. So her and
Okay,
I had, like, broken up. We weren't gonna get back together. And
okay.
then I had met my son's mom. We had started hanging out and dating and whatnot,
Yada
and
yada yada.
yada, 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 and here he is.
All
My
right.
my my beau my beautiful baby boy. Um, but it's yeah, man, it's very interesting for him, navigating life,
Right,
and he and I have had the conversation about his background. His
right.
mom is German and Russian. I am Antiguan
Yeah,
and
yeah.
English and German. So, and the Irish in my family comes from my father's side.
Mm-hmm.
My
Yeah.
my three or four times great grandfather was from Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he had been a missionary to Antigua and fell in love with
Mm.
a woman in Antigua, and that's where my family started from.
Okay.
my father's family. So, yeah, man, my son is, he's a he's such a blessed young man in the amount of knowledge he has around him and at his disposal,
Right.
as far as his family's concerned, because now that I have closure on my family, that can bring him closure on his family and who he
Brings it all
is,
together
and
about his grandfather that he
yeah,
just met when he
mhm.
was 13. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Things of that nature.
absolutely.
So it's fair to say that he's pretty fair skinned.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, he's
Yeah. So
fair-skinned, he
and from the cultural standpoint, have you had to had the talk with him about certain aspects, especially if he branches out and leave Washington and go to different parts of the United States of the world? And have you had to had that conversation about the black and brown conversation, the way society has
mhm,
changed, since George Floyd and since certain
mhm.
members in office changed the dynamic of the way Americans see people that look like us. Did you have to have a conversation with him, or is he pretty privy to knowledgeable
But, you
to
know,
what's going on?
he's a very intelligent young man,
Right.
and from a very young age, I made him aware that he was mixed,
Right.
and even though he didn't really see it,
Hmm.
and his mom kinda, raised him like a little white kid, just
Right.
so everything was easier on him. So, he and I had the conversation. He came to live with us when he was 10, and we started having those conversations, and then the whole thing happened with George Floyd, and then I kinda sat
Hmm.
down with him and asked him, "How do you feel about this? What's your thoughts?" And very introspective young man at the time, and he was just really he understands. He understands that he passes, very
Hmm.
much so. He understands, you know, for the things I've been through, the things his grandfather's been through.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, he has black and brown siblings from his mom.
Good. Hmm.
So it's a melting pot of siblings for him. So he
Hmm.
very much understands race and he understands what it means because all those kids are mixed.
Right.
So,
Right.
him and all his siblings are mixed. So they all share that in common and they all got to navigate this world in that same way. So
Yeah.
one of his sisters is a quarter just like he is.
Hmm.
And they both look like two little white kids if you put them next to each other, but they
Right.
both understand the dynamic
Hmm.
because they've grown up with the dynamic. They've grown up in the dynamic of it.
Right.
So for him, he knows what's out there and he has an opinion on it. And, he doesn't like seeing certain things. He doesn't like the way people treat certain people. He's very much a man of the people.
Hmm.
And I'm very, very proud that he's so emotionally intelligent about it.
This
And
is
because
good.
he
This is good.
understands, because I've explained to him the things I've gone through. I explained to him in high school finding a noose on my gym locker. I explained that to him in the dynamic of, what happened next. What were the repercussions for that action of that white student that did that?
Hmm.
So we have those types of conversations all the time.
Good. It's good to be able to have those conversations because it sets them up for reality. Because it's nothing
Hmm.
worse than being blindsided with something and then it's thrown in your face, you know how to react to it. It's the same thing I talk to my daughters. I laugh, I crack jokes at them, and I'm always, oh, you got some big feet or whatever. Just crack jokes on them, just trying to toughen up their skin. Because if I
Yeah.
love you and I crack jokes on you, imagine how somebody's going to feel about you when they don't like you. So they're
Yeah.
gonna have to come with something better because they heard it all from dad. They heard it all
Right.
from dad, and they better come with something that have really pierced that armor that I've been putting on
Hmm.
them for them to be like affected by it. And it's coming from a
Yeah.
place of love, getting you ready for society because society don't give a shit about you. Your family loves you, right, wrong, or indifferent. We're gonna love our children as
Hmm.
as we should, but society has their own vision of who you are, being a young black female, being mixed or whatever, and how they treat you. It's like a story I always tell. It's like if you look at it like a job. Your job love you when you're at work and you're doing great things for the company and you're, closing out the reports, you're doing all the
Yep.
sales and, whatever it is that you're doing at your job. You could be at the highest level of success at your job on Monday. Tuesday, something fatal happens. Wednesday, they're posting your job to get filled. You see what I'm saying? They move on
Yeah.
so fast. It is just the reality of what the reality is. So it's all about, appreciating what you have at home, appreciating what you got, because we're not irreplaceable on the job sector out there in the public. So when your family, when
Right.
a loved one loves you, take it all in and accept it. Right, wrong, or indifferent. No, none of us are perfect. We all have made mistakes. I'll tell you, I've made 1,000 mistakes as a father, 1,000 mistakes when I was, as a husband, 1,000 mistakes as a brother, uncle, cousin, son,
Hmm.
nephew. I've made
Yeah.
all the
Nobody's
mistakes.
perfect.
Nobody's perfect. I don't want perfect.
Nobody.
I tell my wife this all the time. I don't want us to be perfect because perfect would feel fake, like we're just doing things to make the other person happy all the time, or we're not
Mhm.
being our individual selves. I don't want perfect. I like scratches and bumps and bruises. I like blemishes. I
Mhm.
like all of that because it shows trial and error.
Yes.
It's like you get all these people who say, and I joke about this. I don't get into religion, but I always circle back. You all these people who say, yeah, God is this, God is the Bible, God is, and it's fine and dandy, but you get their Bible, and their Bible is brand new. It's not weathered or torn or abused, or
Mhm.
there's no
No
highlight
one's
markers.
highlighted their favorite passage or nothing.
You see
Like,
what I'm saying? You can hear the
yeah,
Bible crack when they open it, because but and that's just the way people. That's just who people are, and I don't try to
yeah.
try to beat them down, but it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And now, have you ever ran into any certain situations with you and your wife out in public, or has she ever had any negative feedback from somebody that she might have addressed with you? And if so, or if not, how did you handle it? If it ever, because sometimes wives will not share nothing with their husbands because they know their husband's gonna go from 0 to 100 real quick.
Mm.
and
That's
it is what it is.
if
And it
if it
is
if it has happened, she hasn't told me because that would happen.
because that
'Cause
would
I
happen.
hey, because that would happen. Because the minute somebody, if I found out we were out somewhere and somebody said something to her negatively about being with me, oh, I'm gonna ether them. Like
It
it's
is what it
over for
is.
them.
It is,
Like I
I'm an
think the
energy
only
matcher. I match people's energy, and I have no problem with it.
absolutely
Right, wrong, or indifferent,
no,
I'm going to match your
no.
energy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're kind and you're gentle and you're a good person, then I'm gonna match that with you. But if you come at
Mhm.
my wife sideways, understand like you're not gonna just talk to my wife however you want to talk to my wife. I'm sorry. Like
It's not going to happen.
no,
Not on my
it's not
watch.
gonna happen. But and that's the other thing is she's only seen me get angry one time, like
Mhm.
angry one time, and I promised her I'd never do it again. And I'm gonna hold to that promise. I don't ever want her to see me like that again.
Because in
And
my,
the
and you
only
can probably
time
relate, there's no sense of reason when I'm at that level.
no, you cannot reason with me.
It's not
Like,
there's absolutely nothing you can say that I'm going to be like, oh, okay.
yeah, no. Like the most, I think, honestly, I think I got real angry one night at one of my shows.
Hmm.
And I just felt this hand on my shoulder, and immediately all the anger left. And it was my wife standing right behind me. And the situation was gonna get about to get real bad
Hmm.
for the gentleman that was in front of me. And the minute I felt her hand on my shoulder, I immediately was like, no, this is not the place. This is not the time. You need to calm yourself down, take a deep breath, let him run his mouth, and walk away. And that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
So, as far as anything she's experienced, she has not made me privy to anything like that that she has experienced or anything that anybody said, which I don't think anybody has
Hmm.
to her because again, she's the type of person who's going to check them if they do. Um, and then I think the one thing
Nip
that
that
we've
shit in the bud.
experienced real quick, I think our honeymoon, we actually experienced one instance on our honeymoon. We got married November of 2016, and we went to Florida for our honeymoon. My aunt at the time was living in Ormond Beach, which is about 4 miles north of Daytona.
Hmm.
And her and I had driven down to Daytona Beach to go check it out because I had never been to Daytona Beach. I want to check it out. I want to see what this is all about. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like MTV Spring Break 95 or like,
Hmm.
92 or anything like that, but we walked around, saw some shops and whatnot. And this is right like literally we got married like right before the election that year.
Okay.
So we were walking down Daytona Beach hand in hand, and this old, and for the purpose of the story, this old white dude walks
Mhm.
by us and just glaring at us like we shouldn't be hand in hand or together. And my wife gripped my hand tight and like turned around like she was gonna say something to him. And I'm like,
Here
oh
we go.
boy, here we go. What's my wife gonna do? And she's like, do you want to stare harder? I was like, ooh, that's what she wanted. Okay. And then that's the only thing that we've experienced together and that I've been conscious of
Good.
in the time we've been
Good.
together. Like we haven't had any of those issues. I haven't had anybody be like, well, why did you start dating her? Why did you marry her? I haven't had nobody do that. Because I'm just
That's
like,
great.
look, because everybody I know knows me and just knows like I love people, the people I love. It
Mhm.
is what it is at the end of the day. And the great thing is most of my like inner circle of people are in mixed marriages.
Mhm.
So like my brother Willie, his wife is Filipino and white, and my boy Casey, my brother Casey, his girlfriend is Hispanic and Native American, and you know another homie's wife is Filipino and black, and then my brother Mike, his wife is East Indian.
Mhm.
So, all these people that are around me are in mixed relationships.
Mhm.
So the great thing is I have that community of people,
Good.
and my brother Will's fiance is white. They're getting married in August, and it's not something as an adult at my age now that I experience as much as I did when I was like in my teens and 20s dating. It was much worse, 20 years ago or even 25 years ago when I was dating. I got more looks and more reactions and more words from people than I do now.
Right. And that's interesting, and it's nice to be able to not experience or not have the expectation of experiencing that a lot of people might have to run into. And it's great that you are able to handle it. You and your wife are able to move forward and just not live in that bubble of nervousness every time
Yeah,
y'all want to go out and do something. Worrying about the I's and the oohs and the ahs, because
yeah.
as the world is and as America is, as culturally diverse as the United States is, there have been statistics that saying that so much percentage of the America is going to be mixed in some way or another.
Mhm.
So many people in the world is going to be like that to where I guess I don't know the words that I can use for or to make it make sense, but I'll just say it how I make it make sense. To where there's no purebreds, I should say,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
going forward.
Because
It's not.
because we
It's not.
we remember, was it the Time magazine issue like
Hmm.
20 years ago? Or like, was it maybe 15 years ago where they said this is
Hmm.
the what people are gonna look like in 2050?
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
remember
I'm
that.
like I'm like I'm like, "Okay, it's 2024. This is happening. It's
Yes.
happening." Like, there's all these people out here who are mixed, who are, racially ambiguous, if you will.
Racially ambiguous. Yeah, I like
You know what I mean? Like, 'cause
that.
that was me my whole life. Like, my whole
Yeah.
teenage life and in my 20s, racially ambiguous. Nobody knew what
Hmm.
I was, right? So, I feel like things are changing a lot for the better when it comes to mixed relationships, interracial relationships. Things are changing for sure. Like, it's not like we see all these videos, people are putting, like, the black wife effect, the black husband effect,
Yeah,
and everything
yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
which
yeah.
it's cute. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I like that shit. I think that's cool. I think it's cute.
Yeah.
I think it's full of joy, and I don't think it's from a place of hate for yourself. Like some
Yes.
people are like, "Oh, like why do you hate yourself so much? Why would you post this?" It's not that. It's
There's
that
no
you're
malicious
seeing that
intent behind that.
somebody is adding a value to someone else's life, and they're seeing how they lived differently before that person and how
Right.
they're a better person now from being with that person. I think that's how I take it.
And I
So
take it the
when I see
exact
that, I'm
same
like,
way.
yeah,
It's like an upgrade,
yeah,
if you will. You see what I'm
you
saying?
upgraded your
Because it
life.
just you upgraded your life. And sometimes you kind of your mate. Oh, it's another thing that I try to talk about or try to spread the fact of when you met your wife. It's the same way I can say when I met my wife. When you met your wife, you loved her for what she was doing at the moment, who she was at the moment, who she hung out with the moment, who she didn't hang out, the things she
Yeah.
did in her personal time, and how the character of who she was at the moment. And she just so happened to be white.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
happened. That's all it was. So when
Yeah.
y'all met and y'all been together, you said coming on, you said
So
8 years?
10 years so 8 years married, in October 11th will be 10 years we've been together.
10 years together. And I'm sure I can be assured that when you met her, you didn't envision what you can turn her into.
No, not
Because
at
when
all.
you met her, you fell in love with what you met.
Yeah,
Right. And the
yeah,
same thing with me. I didn't say, oh man, when I marry my wife, 4 years, 2 years from now, she can be this and then be the perfect match for me. And I
right,
think it's people out there who look at marriage in that aspect as far as what they can, especially, not to shoot anybody in the foot, but some women have had that issue with trying to turn a halfway decent man into a great husband, right?
right.
He's going, if he wants to change for the better, that's going to be on his shoulders to do, and vice versa. If a woman wants to be a great wife, she gonna have to make any adjustments to do that. We do change. I'm sure you've changed since you met your wife, and I've changed since I met mine, but I've changed for
Oh, yeah.
better to add more substance to our marriage, add more substance to our relationship. So there is a change, but it should be a change from within, not an external change as far as you telling me, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And
Mhm.
that rolls back into the black white effect.
Right,
Maybe these guys looked at, the flavor or the essence that they're receiving from their wives and decided, hey, I'm in this environment. Let me tap
yeah.
into who I really am or who I
Hey,
always
you know what?
been.
Imma tell you right now, I saw one video and I wish I would've saved it, but I saw one and this dude, I'm listening to him speak about his black wife, this white dude,
Mhm.
and I'm like, "My man knew what he wanted." Like, he knew what he wanted in this life. The way he was talking about how they met and just, like, how he thought he was well put together when they met, like, he was a suit guy, like, he thought he was like, a fashion dude or whatnot, but when he met his wife, like, he said, like, 5 years into the relationship, he's like, "My whole style changed, and it's everything I've ever wanted in this life," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, I like that." And then you see those type of videos with people, and I think for me, I had a lot of self-doubt in my
Right.
life, and I doubted myself a lot. 'Cause I didn't have a whole lot of positive reinforcement
Mhm.
from previous relationships with women or even from family, honestly. Like, at
Mhm.
one point, I felt kinda outcast from my family and didn't feel like I really had a whole lot of support just, like, emotionally, mentally, and whatnot.
Mhm.
So, I kinda had to so that's why music really allowed me to express my emotions and my feelings and really tap into who I am and really find out who I am as a person, as a man. And that was something for me when I met my wife. I just realized how she was challenging me.
Mhm.
And without even knowing she was, right? She was challenging me as a person. She was challenging me as a parent. And
Mhm.
I always felt like I've fallen short as a parent because I always wanted my kids to have the life have the opposite of what I had growing up.
Mhm.
I wanted them to have a present father, someone who was trying to teach them the right lessons, right from wrong, how to navigate this life, and there's so many times where I felt like I was a bad father or just wasn't doing the right job that my wife would come to me and tell me that I was being ridiculous
Right.
and that I was doing a good job as a father. And, every now and then she'll send me like a little meme or something telling me how good of a father I am or that I'm appreciated as a father, even though I want the appreciation from my kids. And I think that's selfish. And I recognize it's selfish. Um, it was something that was very frustrating for me that like I just didn't feel like they were appreciating me.
Mhm.
But my wife to tell me like it used to bother me when she told me they'll appreciate you when they're older, when they're
Right.
out there in
Yeah.
the world on their own and they wake up in the morning and go, "Damn, dad was right." Or
Reflecting.
I've never appreciated dad so much right now, like,
Hmm.
and I guess for me, because I don't wanna be appreciated when I'm in the ground.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't, because I know I talk to my father every day. Every day
Hmm.
since we found each other, I have spoken to him. Like, we might go maybe a couple days where we don't speak,
Hmm.
but then it's like, I appreciate him so much, and just the love that I've gotten and the lessons that he's given me just in these short years that we've had each other. I don't want to have my kids appreciate me on the day that they're eulogizing me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, that's selfish of me, and I recognize that. But I mean, maybe it's just for me, for my mental health of it, knowing that they appreciate me. And I know my son appreciates me, and I know my daughter appreciates me. I know they do.
Yeah.
But I just don't feel that.
Hmm.
And maybe it's because they don't know how to express it. But
Yeah.
that for me is a big thing, is I've learned to from my wife has really taught me to love myself.
Hmm.
And I can honestly say there has been a long time where I haven't loved myself.
Right.
And when I met her, she changed my whole outlook on that. I met somebody who loved themselves, who was goofy, who liked to have fun, and somebody who didn't shy away from going on an adventure.
Right.
Like, there are mornings that we've woken up and we're laying in bed. I'm like, "Do you wanna go on an adventure today?"
Hmm.
And she's like, "Absolutely." Like, I've been in relationships where I say that, I'd be like, "What do you mean?" Like
Where we going? What I got to put on?
like, "What?"
What
Yeah,
time?
right, like, no, no, I'm talking about, "Let's get showered, let's get dressed, and let's just leave." Like, the
Whatever
kids are
happens,
fine.
happens.
They're doing their thing. Like, let's go do our thing for the day. Like, I could do that with my wife, and I think that is really I feel like she's molded me more as a human being over these last 10 years than I have myself before her.
It's good. That's good. That's good stuff, man. And it's great that we're having this conversation because you know what June is. June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes, it is.
And being able to, and especially for you to be as transparent as you were a couple minutes ago, and just being able to vocally acknowledge the struggles that you saw and the
Yeah,
needs that you needed to make yourself feel more confident about yourself. And it's also it's great to have a space to where we've been talking for about a week now, but we've been talking with each other just over an hour, and then you having the sense and space to understand that you're in the space with no judgment from me at all.
mhm,
And also, it's also a maturity thing. We get to a certain age to where we realize what's more important, and our mental health is very important. And then you being able comfortable enough to share that with me without
yeah,
any judgment, because I can concur and I can see exactly where you're coming from. And that's also kind of like the downfall of humanity from a man's perspective, that we don't find ourselves in those spaces to where we can be vulnerable and talk about the struggles that we have outside
yeah,
of finance, outside of whatever, just
yeah.
from my brain. You see what I'm saying?
Well, and
From a
and
feeling.
I feel the biggest part of that, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and a lot of men who are gonna watch this can relate to this. A lot of us at one point in our lives refused to be vulnerable
Hmm.
with the people we were with, our partners, because we were so used to that vulnerability being thrown back in our faces. When they would get upset with us, they would bring up the shit that you told them in confidence, and they
Hmm.
would throw it at your face in an argument.
To hurt you.
And yes, and I had that happen so much. I had
Mm.
such a wall up when I met my wife, and for her to allow me the space to be vulnerable with no ill intent, and no
Hmm.
matter what discussion, argument, miscommunication, or disagreement we've had over the last 10 years, she has never thrown anything back in my face. And that's one of the top 3 reasons that she is the greatest woman in my
Hmm.
life, because she has never done that to me,
Hmm.
and I truly appreciate that. I feel that with with men's mental health, it's extremely important. And I know there are people out there who are commenting on posts that people are putting up about men's mental awareness, and they're like, "Well, this is something that this is an everyday thing." I'm like, "No, we understand it's an everyday thing.
Mhm.
That men go through these struggles every day. We're just trying to create spaces where men can be vulnerable. Because who are we more vulnerable with, John? All the time, our boys, right?
100%.
Our boys, 100%. And
Mhm.
again, I feel very grateful for my circle because these brothers will never throw any of my vulnerability back in my face because they know I would not do that to them.
Exactly.
And I feel like with men's mental health, it needs to be protected.
Mhm.
It needs to be protected. Because if we take a look at it, right, I have a lot of friends and family who are military or prior military.
Mhm.
And we look at mental health, right? The mental
Mhm.
health of our soldiers, of our men who serve. And just knowing how many soldiers are no longer here because they could not find a way to, I don't want to say deal with because that just seems dismissive,
Yeah.
to cope or to or were unable to find a space where they could be vulnerable without being judged,
Mhm.
and they felt like they couldn't be here anymore, and it hurts my heart to know that those men didn't have that space, and they because so many of them saw so much
Right.
and that they couldn't talk about, or it was hard for them to talk about, or if they talked about it, it was like they were reliving it, and
Mhm.
I recognize that, and that's why men's mental health is just so important. Like, there's people out there who aren't soldiers who are going through the same thing
Yep.
every single day.
Trauma's trauma.
I guarantee there's a couple right now watching this,
Mhm.
as it's put out, that are gonna be sitting there going, "I don't have a safe space."
Mhm.
Like, how do I find a safe space to speak about what I'm going through? And if somebody doesn't feel comfortable enough, finding a therapist or finding a counselor to speak with, everybody's got at least one good homie that they can talk to that
Right.
would love for them to open up and have them as that space where they could speak about anything. And it's so very important, especially with younger boys, like my son.
Mhm.
Like, I think about his mental health all the time. And I think about what these kids go through these days. John, it is nothing like I went through at 18. My God, man.
Exactly.
Like, I
Exactly.
there were no there was no extreme violence in schools until I
Yeah.
was 18.
Mhm.
Until I was 18. And then it happens all the time now.
It's daily. Daily.
Daily it
Something happens
happens.
daily. Yeah.
And I look at it now and I can understand how a lot of these young men don't feel like they have a space to be vulnerable because it's now back to being perpetuated as them being weak,
Yes. That's it.
which I don't understand why caring about your mental health is weak. I don't understand that.
That's one of the strongest things that you can possibly do is acknowledge it and then discuss how to make yourself
Yes.
better.
And
Because
it's
it's one
not
of
that you can
yeah.
it's not about fixing it, right? It's about
Mhm.
acknowledging it. It's about finding ways that you can continue to move forward.
Mhm.
My biggest motto is keep moving forward.
Right.
Right? No matter what happens, we as people in general, we have to keep moving forward. We
Right.
can't we You can give up, but you shouldn't give up.
Mhm.
You should keep moving forward because there's so much out there that's great that can happen for you. And that's what I express to my kids because they're at that age where they're becoming adults. They're pretty soon they're going to be out in the world and they're going to be doing their thing without the support of me and mom.
Yeah.
And
It's coming.
I know they're not going to be 100% prepared mentally, but I want them to have some idea of their own mental health and that it's okay to talk to people when they're not feeling like they're their best self.
It's okay. It's absolutely okay to be able to
Mhm.
discuss that and then being comfortable again, being in a safe space and just feeling your supporting cast, because your supporting cast is what is going to dictate, a lot of your success. Everyone needs a supporting cast. It's okay to do certain things by yourself, but when you got a supporting cast that's keeping your left and right limits tight and doing those
Mhm.
self corrects that they can give to you, and just not being a yes man, because there's too many people out there right now that have yes
Mm.
men that allow
Yes.
certain things to happen, that are scared to say, hey buddy, you shouldn't be doing that. It's like it's so much, you see it so much in society right now, with a lot of celebrities surrounding themselves with yes men, and nobody's checking them and righting the ship, and it causes their downfall. Then
Yep.
when they look back on it, they be like, man, what makes it, 'cause that's the first thing I say. I was like, who's around them?
Right. Who was around that didn't curb this behavior?
Yeah,
And I understand why people don't curb the behavior when it comes to celebrities, because these celebrities are the meal tickets for those people.
there
So
you go.
if this person's putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in my pocket every year and paying for everything for me, and that hundreds of thousands of dollars just sits there in my bank account, and I can collect that for over 10 years, and all of a sudden I've got $20 million sitting in the bank, and then I could say something, and then I'll be fine because I got $20 million in the bank. Like, that's the mentality some people have, like, people
You are
need to be,
absolutely right, brother.
like, accountable, right? Like, you gotta be accountable for your actions and what you do. Like, these celebrities are out here wilding, man. They've been wilding for decades.
It ain't gonna stop. It
Bro,
ain't gonna
it's
stop.
not. It's not gonna stop until it stops.
And it's
It's not gonna it's not
it here's a prime example of current, especially with current affairs and celebrities right now. You look at Hot Topic. You look at Diddy. There were people in his circle that saw what he did and kept silent. And look what it's
because they
morphed
didn't wanna
into.
lose that money.
Look at what it's morphed into. And now look at the situation. R. Kelly. A lot of things could have been prevented if somebody would have
Yeah.
said something the second something occurred. It could have helped him from going down a path, down a corridor that's led to,
Mhm.
all the strife and issues that he's caused, that put themselves into the eye of the law, having to come in and intervene. It's all about the circle that you surround yourself with. That's why I try to keep my circle around select individuals, like minded, people who would
Mhm.
check me, and people who have different visions and different perspectives on stuff. Because I don't want to be around a bunch of yes men who's going to say yes to everything I say, or even agree. It's okay to
Mhm.
disagree, because if you disagree, that means that you're developing different ideas in your head that you hadn't seen from that direction before. So your best bet is to surround yourselves with different people. And like they always say, if you're in a room, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly.
You in the
Exactly. You you
absolutely
you
wrong
have to
room.
surround yourself with those people who are gonna challenge you.
Hmm.
And that's why, again, going back to it, that's why I love my circle so much, man. We can have
Yeah,
some of the most spirited conversations, and we can all disagree on so many things, but at the end of that conversation, it ends with an "I love you. I'll see you
that's all
later."
it
You
is.
know what I'm
That's
saying? Like,
all
it's
it
it's
is.
like, it's funny I say that because we always have game nights over here at our house. My brothers
Hmm.
and their ladies will come over, the ladies will hang out, and we'll end up at the dining room table talking about movies, television, music, like hypotheticals all night, and we may not agree with each other on everything, but that's the greatest part about having those types
And
of
that's okay.
conversations,
And that's
and that's
okay.
okay, and we talk about men's mental health so much in our group, and, like, how we are grateful we have people holding us accountable, and people if you're not holding yourself accountable for things you know you should be, then to have somebody else come to you and be like, "Hey, man, can we talk about XYZ?" Have the conversation because 'cause they're not coming
Right.
to you to have a gotcha moment. They're coming to
Exactly.
you to help you navigate through and hopefully come to a point where you can be like, "You know what? I was wrong in that situation.
Mhm.
I was wrong to say that." You know what I mean? So, I feel like especially with celebrities, man, I tell my kids this all the time. We are in an unprecedented time when it comes to access of people. We never had access of people like we have access of people
Mhm.
right now. 'Cause as you and I know, I mean, you're only 10 years older than me, so you know, growing up, like, in the '90s, we didn't know nothing about nobody. We didn't
No
know anything.
divorces, no estranged
Man,
relationships,
the only
none of
thing
it.
we knew is what People Magazine told us,
Yeah.
what Time Magazine told us, what Newsweek told us, right? That's what
That
we
was
knew,
it.
what the papers told us.
That's
Entertainment
it.
Tonight, you know what I
Yes, that
mean?
was
Like,
it. Or in a magazine or something that we got off.
yeah,
That was how we
that was
found out
it.
about everything. Yeah.
Could you imagine, John, for a minute, imagine having social media in 1992?
It would be terrible.
Bro,
It would be
knowing imagine
absolutely
knowing
terrible.
everything about Princess Diana. Imagine knowing everything
Yeah, the
as it
history that led up to the
unfolded.
incident. Yes.
Yeah, imagine that, right? Like, that would be overload for us back then.
100%.
We
100%.
wouldn't have known how to deal with it all. We'd have been out
Society
there.
society
Yeah.
hasn't developed and matured. Society was very, very young and ignorant to a
It
lot of facts back then.
very,
But I
very, but
was
now we
okay
look at
with
it.
it. I was
Mm.
okay with it.
Look, I make the joke all the time. I wanna drop my kids off in 1993 and pick them up in 1995.
Yeah, figure it out.
I just wanna see how they do. I just
That's
wanna
it. No, nothing.
Hey, I
Because
wanna
I
see how
remember,
y'all live.
I always talk about that's why this generation, you're probably on the cusp of it. You know, before internet, before all that, before
Mhm.
and during and what it's came into. There's very few people who have lived through that. I remember when cell phones and computers weren't even a conversation.
Yep,
You see what
yep,
I'm
you had to have
saying?
money to have them. You had to have
Oh, money.
money.
VCRs, you had to have
Mo
money to be able
uh,
to enjoy
hey.
those.
Oh, no, you had to have money to have the tape rewinder for the VCR.
Exactly. That's all it was, a
Ye
standalone tape rewinder for a VCR. Just take it out, pop it in, put it another. It was so much. It was life was so
Yeah.
different back then. Me and my wife and my stepdaughter, my bonus child, was having a conversation this week. We were talking about music, and
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure I'm a. I think you do music a little bit, just a little dab, a little
Just a
touch
little
here and
bit.
there, right? Just a little bit.
I dabble.
And we're you dabble. We're talking about music in the '90s, and I said there will never be a decade of music like the '90s
Mm-mm.
ever in the history of man. I said
No.
every
Mm-mm.
single genre of music in the '90s were bangers. Everything.
Fire. Fire, everything, everything. I don't care. I don't care.
Eh,
Heavy metal, country music, rap music, pop music, jazz music. Like, there wasn't a genre that didn't have a run. Like, if let's be real, 1990 to 1999,
Mm-hmm.
right? The decade started where pop music was top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything pop. Any
Right.
Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston,
Right.
Bobby Brown, New Edition, all that, right? Then you had on the opposite side Madonna, and then you
Mm-hmm.
had all the white artists coming out. You had
Yep.
Rick Astley in the
Yeah.
90s for God's sake. You had Wham in the 90s for God's sake. Like, you're watching all this
Then George
unfold.
Michael started doing his own thing when he
Oh,
left Wham. Music was
George Michael? Bro,
yep.
that one of my favorite artists of all time is George Michael. Hands down. He was
Yeah,
one of
when he
the most
went Wham, he
talented
was solid in Wham,
young
but when he
men.
went solo,
Bro,
he took it to another
bro,
level.
did you watch the documentary on them on Netflix?
I probably did not.
Watch that with your wife. I promise you
Okay.
right now, you will have a deeper appreciation for George Michael and Wham after you watch that documentary. It was so beautifully done, and it showed how 2 18-year-old boys
Hmm.
from England
Right.
became pop superstars, and the work they put in, because they
Yeah.
put in work, John.
The grind.
Nobody handed them shit. They
Right.
put it in work. So we talk about that decade of music. The minute you get to 93, hip hop takes over. Hip hop and
100%.
rap take over from 93 to
100%.
99.
Exploded.
Bro, like my kids now,
Exploded,
like
man.
my kids listen to all that. Like my daughter listens to so much 90s hip hop and rap, and my son listens to it too. We were in the car the other day and Lucchini by Camp Low came on.
Oh my gosh.
I look over and he's like, "Who's this?" And I tell him, and he pulls out his phone and he just types it in. into Spotify, finds it, puts it on
Right.
favorites. I was like, yeah, okay. I like that.
That
You
was one
know?
of that song right there. Every time I hear it, it takes me back to a time period in my life where especially when it's that when they did the good when they did the video and it was like to the theme of good times and all that, and it was just like
Yes.
that's
And the
what you
well,
know what
I think the video you're thinking of is Black Nostalgic.
black black nostalgic. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep. Yep.
We're going to circle back here in a little bit, and we're going to talk about music
Okay.
because
Okay.
we could go down a rabbit hole right
Oh,
now,
I could go down a rabbit hole on
and
that.
then we look up. It'd be 7 hours into just talking about music because
Greatest podcast episode ever.
ever just talking about music.
Ever. Ever.
Yeah, man. But anyway, let's go ahead and just bring us to a head. I want to say, KJ, it was definitely a pleasure, and I'm going to let you finish on some notes about what we just talked about. We talked about the dynamics of your coming to meeting your pops, and then into in mixed
Mixed
marriages.
relationships.
Mixed marriages, and also the culture as far as with your son being a young man of age. And just want to wrap it up and see what are your thoughts about some of the stuff that we talked about today, and some advice that you can give to newly married mixed marriages if they're seeing themselves in any struggles, or a couple
Okay.
of anecdotes to look forward to. What do you think?
If there's any bit of advice I could offer, and it's gonna sound super cliche, but it really is don't yell at each other.
Mm,
Don't yell at each other. You know, my wife and I realized like we would have most of our disagreements via text. And
right,
then when we'd see each other, we wouldn't talk about it.
right.
We would just go on about our days.
Mm,
And that was something that I was like, yo, I appreciate that, And I think the more into our marriage I get, I realize that it's not about picking your battles per se.
mm,
It's about effectively communicating with your spouse. I feel that if you remove ego from the situation
mm,
and remove your hubris and just have an open conversation, your relationship just is strong.
mm,
It really is. Open communication at all times should be your goal.
mm,
When it comes to being in an interracial relationship or marriage, I feel that that is really understanding each other
mm,
and how each other grew up, whatever that dynamic may be, and understand how they may have lived in their lives before you and what they've experienced. And understand it. Don't dismiss it and don't
mm,
just push it to the side and act like it doesn't matter because it does matter.
mm,
It matters very much so in how your relationship moves forward. And not everybody has like not I'll put it like this, not like if you're in the situation I'm in, not every white woman had a perfect upbringing. Like
right,
I don't know what this thought that when you see an interracial relationship, like, oh, the non-brown person had a perfect upbringing,
right.
perfect parents, because they didn't. They didn't. They just simply like I think less than 3% of families are perfect, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. You know what I mean? If I feel like if you don't have a little struggle in you, then
Mm,
you really haven't lived life. And you really
exactly.
haven't experienced life. Like
I
I talk about a
100% agree.
struggle me like let's talk about struggle meals, like talk about
Mm-hmm.
being a latchkey kid. Like I
Right.
mean I grew up alone basically.
Mm-hmm.
Just being alone all the time. Mom's working 2, 3 jobs. I came home, fed myself, put myself to bed. May not see her that day. You know what I mean? So I think when people are getting into these relationships, having not just like an open mind per se, but having an open heart and having an open conscience and really understanding where people are coming from when they explain how they grew up or when they explain what's happened to them in their lives. I think being open to have the conversation and not shying away from the conversation is the greatest thing you can do.
Absolutely, brother, man. Those are some great anecdotes and a great thought processes moving forward, man. KJ, I want to say I really, really appreciate you, spending some time with me today and me getting
Oh,
to know
absolutely,
you.
man.
getting to know you on a personal level and a very, very personal level. And you also just be able to share your thoughts and then where you are in your place right now. And this is just the beginning of our newfound friendship. And
Yes, sir.
I look very much forward to our next conversation and things that we can build on. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Husband Show podcast, where husbands band together
Yes, sir.
to navigate this thing we call marriage. Brother, man, have a great day, man, and I'll be talking to you soon, man. Stay blessed, brother.
Sounds good, John. Appreciate you.